Last week, we kicked off a 3-week series on intimacy in marriages, and we looked at how intimacy is far more than physical intimacy. That's where most people complain. They complain, oh, we're not intimate, but what about the emotional and the spiritual? We talked about that last week, and this week we're going to look at you being safe enough to actually be known by your spouse.
Welcome to the HHP podcast. My name is Chris Frankie, and I am the senior pastor of HFF.church in Oklahoma City. Join me and others from around the country as we talk all things Bible, church, and family. We may be right, we may be heretical, but that's for you to decide. Drop a like, a share, a comment, subscribe, and let's get to it.
A lot of times when we're doing counseling, we get into a situation where people want to talk about the other person. They want to talk about their spouse. They want to talk about how their spouse isn't meeting their needs or their spouse is abusive. And sometimes that's absolutely true. So don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting any of that. Sometimes it's absolutely true. But the Bible teaches us that we are to first look at ourselves. We're to first be self-aware and self-governing, so to speak. Then we are to look at other people, that whole speck in your brother's eye, but the plank that's in your own. And so today I want to talk about how we can look at ourselves and see, are we safe enough to be known? Do we operate in vulnerability, grace, and emotional intimacy? Because I'm actually tired of talking about physical intimacy and how we're not active enough in our physical intimacy when we're doing nothing to attack the emotional or the spiritual intimacy problems. Because all we're doing is we're just getting active. We're not actually changing the heart posture. And so you can't be fully loved if you're not fully known. This truth sounds simple, but it's deeply challenging because being known actually requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires you to feel safe. Many marriages struggle not because the love is gone, but because the safety has been slowly eroded through the actions and the words of a husband or a wife. Marriages don't normally struggle because love is gone. It's because safety has been slowly eroded. Conversations become guarded. Emotions become hidden. Conflict becomes avoided instead of addressed. And everybody's walking around on those proverbial eggshells. Today, we're talking about how intimacy grows in the soil of safety and how grace makes vulnerability possible. Genesis says Adam and Eve were naked and unashamed. That wasn't just physical. It was emotional, mental, and all capacities. There was nothing hidden. There was nothing guarded. When shame enters the story through sin, humanity has been hiding ever since. In marriage, safety means this. When I open my heart, I won't be punished for it. Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. It invites your spouse into your inner world, your fears, your hopes, your dreams, your wounds. And when vulnerability is met with grace, your intimacy will deepen together. Scripture tells us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Yet many couples do the opposite. They're quick to respond, they're quick to speak, and they're quick to become angry. We often defend before we truly understand. We correct before we can connect. And we make statements as if they're absolute. We make statements like, you did this, as if it's to speak towards the intention of a person rather than the practice. And all of these things are swords. They're verbal swords that cut deeply the person who we're trying to help heal. One of the healthiest practices a couple can adopt from a Christian standpoint is emotional check-ins. Everybody's worried about the physical intimacy, but how is somebody emotionally? How is your spouse emotionally? If your spouse is not okay emotionally, then you should have no expectation at all for them to be okay physically. So ask a simple question. How's your heart today? Not because you're looking to fix, not because you're looking to lecture. You're just there to listen. Guys, a lot of times this is something we really, really struggle with. It's not your job to fix everything. You aren't your wife's dad. You're there to listen, to support. A warning sign is emotional withdrawal, coexisting instead of connecting. We talked a little bit about transactional relationships last week. Transactional relationships exist all over the place, and most people are just okay with that. They think that's the standard. Transactional relationships are a telltale sign of you coexisting with your spouse. When hard conversations are avoided, husbands and wives, listen to me. Oh, I don't want to have that conversation because it's super hard or they're going to be angry. Yeah, that's nonsense. When hard conversations are avoided, intimacy doesn't stay neutral. It slowly erodes because the problem doesn't go away and the feeling doesn't go away. But safety can't be rebuilt. Through humility, through patience, through choosing curiosity over defensiveness, I want to understand. As Proverbs says, the purpose of the hearts are deep waters, but a wise partner will draw them out. Healthy intimacy requires grace to flow freely from both sides, husbands to wives and wives to husbands, because vulnerability without grace will lead to shame. Shame will ruin intimacy in your relationship, but vulnerability will cover grace, leading to unity. We all need more grace. We all need more unity in our marriages. Doesn't matter how awesome your marriage is. When your spouse will feel safe with you, they will open their hearts to you. If they're telling their best friend things that they're not telling you, that's because they feel safe with their best friend. They don't feel safe with you. And a lot of times, especially men, and I know I'm harping on men, but I'm a guy, so I want to speak from a man's perspective. You get frustrated that your spouse is sharing something with somebody else, but there's a reason why she doesn't feel safe in sharing it with you. And that's not really her problem. I think we need to, before you turn off the podcast and you write me an angry letter, if you're leading your wife, you have to take responsibility when things aren't right. You can't just take responsibility when things are good. So if your spouse doesn't feel safe with you, there is a reason why, and it is your responsibility to get to the bottom of it and fix it. Husbands, you are to protect your wife. You are to help your wife thrive. You are not there to be a controlling mechanism. So when your spouse feels safe, their heart will open. And when their hearts open, intimacy will flourish. Marriage isn't about being perfect. It's about being present.
If this podcast has blessed you, please consider supporting by visiting our website and making a donation. For more resources, blogs, podcasts, please visit us at HFF.church. Looking for a church home? Join us for Saturday Church in OKC every Saturday morning, starting at 10:30.
If you got questions, if you got doubts, if your faith survived the fire and you're still working it out,